Life in Romania has changed extraordinarily. Homes are warmer, streets are brighter, there's more food in the shops, people speak and act openly. And why? Because the Romanian people decided to end their enforced enslavement to the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. Romania, until a few short weeks ago, was a Stalinist enclave resisting the democratic tide sweeping neighbouring countries. But the shooting down of demonstrators in the town of Timișoara started a wave of protest which spread eventually to Bucharest in the south. This evening, a special Today Tonight report describes the sort of social and economic slavery that the Romanians rebelled against. We hear accounts of the revolution and show previously unbroadcast film of the army joining in the protest days earlier than was previously believed. We tell the fearsome story, only now emerging in full, of the slaughter at Timișoara, with scenes, some of which you may find upsetting. How Romania won its freedom and how it's coming to terms with it. Brendan O'Brien reports.
In Bucharest, the old citadel of power, Communist Party headquarters is guarded by the tanks. This time they're guarding the revolution. It was people power that downed Nicolae Ceausescu, but the barrels of the army's guns were essential for the dramatic shift from Stalinistic oppression to unimagined new liberties. Today, Romania faces into an uncertain and confused future. At every turn, the physical and psychological battle scars remind Romanians of the price they've paid. In the smaller towns are many unsung victims. 38 died in northwestern Cluj. In hospitals across the country, civilians and soldiers rebuild their bodies and remember the drama of their own personal battle. Doctors at Timișoara in the west gave this man a 50-50 chance. His young fiancée tenderly hoped for the best. Romania today is a place of intensely mixed emotions. Pain, sadness, grief. But everywhere, the overwhelming sentiment is joy.
I don't know how I feel. I feel so free, so happy, so hopeful especially. Huge hopes I have.
Ceausescu's Romania was at odds with an ancient people, a people spawned from the melting pot of Eastern Byzantine traditions and Western Catholicism. The country's 23 million people are spread evenly throughout the towns over the Carpathians. Across the Danube, neighbouring Yugoslavia, whose liberal influences were important. For years, liberals were frozen out of the country's leadership. Ceausescu's men resisted change to the end. These horrifically mutilated bodies, dug up from a mass grave, were discovered by the people of Timișoara days after the shootings. It's believed the Securitate tortured them, desperate to find the leaders of the rebellion. But in Timișoara, as elsewhere, no secret leadership existed. It was a near spontaneous explosion of defiance. These previously unpublished pictures of Timișoara's unthinkable act of rebellion were taken by a local 14-year-old boy. It was December 19th, 2 days after Timișoara's first killings and before the mass protests in Bucharest. They dared defy Ceausescu, then still in power. This was where Romania's revolution began. The genesis of Timișoara's protest grew from the actions of an obscure ethnic Hungarian Baptist preacher, Laszlo Tokes. Tokes preached against the Ceausescu regime. On December 16th last, Tokes was to be evicted. A large crowd arrived in his defense. This triggered the crackdown which led to Timișoara's killings next day and ended with the fall of Ceausescu. It's Sunday morning, 31st of December, New Year's Eve. There was to have been a church service here in the First Baptist Church, Timișoara. Pastor Tokes was to have returned a conquering hero from his safe haven in a small village 300 kilometers further inland. It was to have been a momentous homecoming. But in the end, his own congregation, knowing of the tensions and fear of reprisals still existing in this town, advised him to stay away. He stayed here amongst his father's congregation in northwest Romania. Pastor Tokes expected to become a martyr to a lost cause. Instead, he is a living hero of the revolution and member of the Front for National Salvation. For months last year, Tokes had remained a virtual prisoner in his own church in Timișoara. Securitate hitmen stayed guard outside. Last week in remote Meniu, he explained why he's staying put.
The army says that it is safe already. But I have consulted my believers and some members of the presbytery, the ruling council of the parish from Timișoara, and they have told that it's possible that there are some terrorists and they want to kill me, so it's better to wait a little and then to go back to Timișoara.
His congregation believe Laszlo Tokes deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Did he ever imagine his stand would spark the explosion that ended Ceausescu's regime?
Oh no, it was unimaginable for me to be the main figure of such an event. But it has happened, it was providential. God has chosen me for this event.
Meanwhile, Romania exists in a state of armed tension as the country rejects its past. Ceausescu and his wife destroyed the lives of our children, says the graffiti. Everywhere today, people gather in spontaneous groups to discuss politics and recount tales of the shootings. In Timișoara, this first-hand account of the 17th of December.
It all began Friday and Saturday near the Turkish church. It was at the beginning a movement just to free him. Thereafter, when they beat us, and we had all the feeling that it is not enough to fight for the priest, but to say all we have to say. And we began to shout down Ceausescu, and we went free election and so on. We came from there, from that street, from the Turkish house, Romanian, Hungarian, Germans, all. And we came on these stairs here. It was a very big crowd of people, young people, 13 teenagers, 13, 14, 15 years, who all shout just one thing: down Ceausescu, we want freedom, we want free election. We don't want communism anymore. Thereafter, here we remained very few, I think 100 or so. And in this moment, the soldiers came running towards us and shooting. And the shooting took place. All of us ran and hide here in the park because it was night. And you saw, if you were there, all the bodies, there was, I saw 20, 30 bodies lying down. We tried to move them and come with us, but they didn't move. We thought they were dead. So when we saw this happening, we knew that for us, for the Timișoara people, there was no way back. We have to fight till or we die or he and his wife had to die.
First, Timișoara people died. We were shown photographs of victims of that night's shootings. People were determined that we see the horror of it all. One man told us why his neighbor took these photographs.
Many people started to make photographs because we knew that we need a document, because people won't believe that. My daughter was there too when the digging took place.
When they dug up the body?
Yes, yes. She is 17 and she was there, the first line. She got sick. She went home and now she could not eat meat till now. When she sees meat, she got sick because she was there.
Timișoara's biggest hospital took in 250 injured on the night of the 17th of December. 60 died in hospital. Doctors say the bodies and all medical records were immediately taken away by the Securitate. No one knows where. That action alone has caused great anger and grief. That night, Securitate guns were first aimed to injure and later to kill.
From, say, 9 o'clock, they were all shot in the legs. Then 11 o'clock, a shot in their stomachs, and as night went on, there were more people coming with injuries, with wounds in their throat and their heads.
And what do you make of that? Why do you think that was?
Probably those Securitate people had their very special orders to first to panic people and then to shoot them in cold blood.
Florica Sava, a 33-year-old mother of 2 young sons, was shot from a car with a dum-dum bullet. It caused massive internal injuries. Doctors said she had just hours to live. Sadness, grief, liberty. Timișoara is a town of great mixed emotions. Many of its citizens feel free to attend church for the first time. No longer is this a daring act of defiance. Ceausescu made clear his wish to see this cathedral terminated. The tragedy for Timișoara is that these people are here to pray for the dead, but presumably also to contemplate a better future.
We have now to start a new life. This is it. A much better life. We have all hopes. We are full of hopes. Full of hopes to restart our economy, to have a better future for our children.
It has affected you very deeply.
Yeah. What I see. I don't want to see something like that in all my life.
In Timișoara, the turning point came when the army joined forces with the crowd. Senior officers seized leadership from the balcony. This was the real moment of the revolution, proof that the army had turned against Ceausescu. Significantly, this was 2 days before Ceausescu turned tail at the mass rally in Bucharest. By that stage, the army generals must surely have already decided that Ceausescu had to go, and which new leadership they would support. Not only was the army crucial to the success of the revolution against Ceausescu, but it is now vital for the stability of the new regime. Here at Timișoara's army headquarters, armed security outside is at an unprecedented level. They are determined to repel any threat against the new order. Do you fully support the revolution?
Vreau să fac o precizare. Armata.
I want to be very precise about the fact that the revolution was achieved not by the army but by the people, by the youth, and we only are here to protect what they have gained, and we are decided to do it and to make everybody live in peace and express their own sincere feelings.
Do you regret that the Communist Party has lost much or most of its power?
I am happy to be now here and to tell you that the communists, meaning Ceausescu, are not any longer the power leading in the country.
So you are happy that the Communist Party has lost most of its power?
Absolut, sunt bucuros de acest
Yes,
lucru.
myself, and not only myself, but all the officers and everybody working in the army are happy that this has happened, and we are glad that this tyrant has been thrown away.
Ceausescu downgraded the army in favor of his own elite Securitate. Top-ranking officers despised him. He abolished their titles, making them his personal appointees. They were ripe to ditch him. Life in Ceausescu's Romania was grim. His centralized agriculture policy was a major failure. 15 years ago, Ceausescu attacked small peasant production in favor of big collective farms. But though peasant-owned farms comprised only 12% of arable land, they produced around half the country's milk, meat, fruit and vegetables. Severe food shortages inevitably resulted, aggravated by Ceausescu's policy of balancing the books by exporting food. But on paper, Ceausescu's agriculture policy looked magnificent. He falsified the per-production figures, greatly magnifying them. Collective farm heads were interrogated and imprisoned for refusing to falsify the figures. In Romania, town and country are close partners. One of the first acts of the new government has been to decree a shift back to private farm owners like this man from the south. People on collective farms are to own the land and house where they live and can sell produce for profit. Almost all urban living is in high-rise apartment blocks. Surprisingly, people were free to buy their own. 3 years ago, Ceausescu delivered a bombshell to all home buyers by decreeing a 20% increase in the price, making a nonsense of existing legal contracts. Inside, living conditions could be intolerable. Electricity was severely rationed, often cut off entirely for winter months. Cars were common enough, but you waited up to 7 years to own one of these Dacia models. Sunday driving was permitted only every second week. Petrol was rationed to 6 gallons a month. In recent times, this dropped to about 2 gallons. To keep on the road, taxis carried monstrous gas cylinders on top. Efficient and cheap public tramways were in place. People had little difficulty travelling within towns. But towns like Timișoara were designated closed. People couldn't move house out of them. Contact with foreigners was made risky and rare. Romanians had to report such conversations to the police. Public scenes like this, open discussion with a foreign journalist, were impossible. Permission was required for an international phone call. The content had to be reported. To make a similar call within 3 months, there was a surcharge of 500 lei, about a week's salary. Ceausescu's social and moral laws were pernicious. A married woman was required to have children or face monthly fines. Contraception was illegal. Married women had compulsory monthly pregnancy tests. If a woman miscarried, she faced interrogation from the Securitate, demanding to know if she deliberately aborted. A grotesque result of this policy was large numbers of unwanted babies ending up in orphanages like this. Timișoara alone had 500 orphans. Doctors here said these children were seriously impaired emotionally and intellectually due to lack of staff. Yet the law made it easy to put children in orphanages and extremely difficult to adopt them. Nicolae Ceausescu may have wondered why his people booed him off the balcony last month, but hatred of him was such that hardly a voice was raised against his execution.
Personally, I think that it weren't enough 1 million execution of him. It wasn't enough. It weren't enough. I'm sorry that there are not more exemplary of this man, that to execute him in every town, before every population.
Ceausescu has been executed. What do you think of that?
Cum să vă spun? Ne pare bine că s-a dus de pe fața pământului să nu mai fie, nici numele lui să nu-l mai pomenim.
It was a good thing, and we are happy that it happened. We don't want to hear about him or his name.
Are you now hopeful?
Sunteți plini de speranță? Aveți încredere?
Da, avem încredere.
Yes, we are hopeful,
Da,
and we trust.
Ceaușescu nu mai există.
If Ceausescu does not exist,
A fost un criminal.
He was a criminal.
Și Ceaușescu la fel.
And Elena Ceausescu too, she was a criminal.
Da.
To the people.
This family are amongst 70 workers who live on Romania's largest horse farm, one of Ceausescu's prestige projects. The farm is run by a 3-person committee of Communist Party members. Down the road lives one of the party top 3, Vasil Nicolaika, the assistant farm manager. His house is sumptuous by normal standards. He says he bought the materials to build it over a period of 10 years. Looking at all this, the decorations, the furniture, the space, I asked Mr. Nicolaika if he had gained advantage by being a party member.
I had no advantage at all. I had to pay every month for the party, and I didn't get anything instead of it. Being a member of the party, I was obliged to speak about certain things, and I was said what to say before the meetings of the party.
Back at the horse farm, living conditions are primitive. These workers were not privileged to be party members. The atmosphere is one of poverty. Under Ceausescu's work policy, 20% of the workers' monthly pay is deducted in advance. They lose this if work targets are not met. The 2-room cottages have no running water or bathroom. At the back, the outdoor toilet is grim. Nicolae Ceausescu's living conditions were somewhat different. This is just the bathroom. And his residence here in Timișoara was like a small townhouse compared to his palace in Bucharest. He only stayed here once in the last 2 years. Ceausescu adorned himself with honours of every imaginable kind. Nicolae Ceausescu, the peasant from southern Romania, was big on self-glorification. This tome here is titled simply Omagiu, or homage to himself. He preached the ideology of the equality of the workers, yet this homage is crammed full of self-images more fitting for an emperor. No touch of modesty here. Ceausescu styled himself the genius of the Carpathians. Down the corridor, his personal bowling alley. Bedrooms with a touch of class. This is just one of Ceausescu's houses in the regions, some of them only made public since his execution. In the hall, a black Labrador, a gift, we're told, from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. Ceausescu's reign is past. The new provisional regime is in place. In Timișoara, as elsewhere, most of the new leaders were those who showed daring leadership during the revolution. The changeover was extraordinary. In Timișoara and in 44 regions, a committee of the National Salvation Front sits where the Communist Party ruled supreme. You were a university lecturer in polytechnics. Now you're where the secretary of the Communist Party was. How can you do that?
I was a member of the original National Salvation Front who led the revolution in Timișoara.
Do you think that any party that wants to get involved in the elections can do so?
Yes, there are already a number of parties formed, and we have our own party, which was formed illegally in Timișoara during the revolution. The party that led the revolution all over the country.
Is it possible for a fully capitalist party to take part in the elections? Then another extraordinary change of guard. Just minutes previously, this man was appointed new chief of police for Timișoara by the local Salvation Front. This is when you were a construction engineer, and this is when you were chief of police. He'd been another leader of the protests. He moved off under armed protection to run Timișoara's police force without a day's experience in policing. In Timișoara, the radio station, still under heavy guard, was crucial to the takeover. Are you expecting more fighting here?
Yes. Him is not shooting now, but I guess he's reformed again these groups.
5 years ago, Ceausescu closed all regional broadcasting stations. This one reopened during the chaos of the revolution. Its broadcasts were a vital line of communication to a frightened and confused people. Bucharest's television station is like an armed camp. Control of television was central to the overthrow of Ceausescu. In fact, the new Revolutionary Council was formed inside this building. And control of television by the new regime is a top priority. People from towns and villages, like this peasant worker, are paraded in to describe the tough life they had under Ceausescu. TV is used daily to win popular support for the revolution. The front has appointed a new head of TV. Few other faces have changed. Most were Communist Party hacks. Delia Budino read announcements on national TV for 20 years.
Yes, they were 90% members of Communist Party. We were obliged. This party was a ghost party. Ghost? Phantom, a ghost party.
Ghost party.
Ghost party. The members were ghost members. The program was a ghost program. Nobody believes in Communist Party.
Here.
Here. Nobody. And we were 23 millions of dissidents deeply in our hearts. But we were obliged to silence.
The front is determined to hold control of all regional and national power points. The tasks are daunting. First, the momentous job of preparing for Romania's free elections, promised for April. The National Peasant Party has joined with the Christian Democrats for the elections. They reject the front's intention to draw up Romania's new constitution before the elections. They fear 4 months is too short, fear that the Revolutionary Front plans to keep control.
I don't trust them because the chiefs of the front are former communists. Not only that they were members of the party, but they were at the top level. They worked directly with former dictator. And if they had personal quarrels or if they have been fired by the dictator, that does not mean that they are not more communists, even if they say so.
The Peasant Party was banned for 44 years, its leaders imprisoned for decades. Do they expect free elections?
I am afraid not. Why? Because we Romanians have a sad experience with elections under communism regimes. They were falsified.
From this point, Ion Iliescu, president of the Revolutionary Front, was a top, if critical, Communist Party politician. All but 2 or 3 of the 25-man new government were party members. But the Revolutionary Front is keenly aware of the wave of public anger against the Communist Party. This village crowd were out to kill this man they mistakenly thought was the local Communist Party secretary. He turned out to be a bank clerk. And last Sunday in Bucharest, the new government came under attack at a mass student rally. They described as puppets the students on the Revolutionary Front, criticised the Ceausescu communists still in power, demanded swift reforms. The people are hungry for news, impatient for action. But if the structures of communism are too swiftly replaced by a market economy, the shockwaves of factory closures could be brutal. Last week, Petre Roman, the Revolutionary Front Prime Minister, explained the dilemma.
About the closing some industries, it's sure that's a problem. About unemployment, we have to examine that with a very great care. We don't have to forget that this revolution was the revolution of all our people. You understand? That's a political problem, and we don't accept to have people which after revolution to be denuded.
Petre Roman is just 3 weeks in the hot seat, time enough to size up the task ahead.
The structure of our economy, the technologies, all means economy was really a disaster. Ceausescu was not interested. He was such a primitive man. He didn't understand which were the tendencies in the world. Our principal industries are at a very low technological level.
Already there's much talk of foreign aid. Last week, Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze came to town. He gave full backing to the revolution and promised economic assistance. But he came as a communist to a country where communism has been dealt a near fatal blow. You started by saying that never before had you seen such emotions in a country. Could I ask you to comment on one emotion which is written on the walls outside of this very hotel, which says, "Down with communism"? That's an emotion which we have found across Romania. What is your comment on that sentiment?
You know, we consider any dictatorship, however it is based or grounded, to be equally unacceptable to Soviet communists and to Soviet people. Dictatorship is in principle unacceptable. That's why we began our revolution, called Perestroika, whose chief characteristic is the democratization of the social, political, and economic life of our country. Have I answered your question?
Time will tell if Romanians are content with the answers of their new leaders. But ordinary life has changed. Petrol and electricity rationing is gone. Dozens of old laws have been swept away. The shops are fuller. For Romanians, these sparse baskets are an improvement. Freedom to talk without fear of reprisal is an enormous thing. Everywhere, ordinary people want to greet the world.
As a friend of tourism, I like to walk all the world around. Now we can do it. I like to see France, Italy, and Europe. With sympathy and friendship, Bogdan Grigorie, the free Timișoara.
Suddenly, Romanians are returning to the community of nations. They still await passports to travel freely. But their psychological imprisonment is over. All the time they express the hopes which motivated the man whose actions sparked the revolution.
I am a European, and I think more and more is present in our thoughts and feelings, this idea, the idea to be a European. So I think that Romania has to become an organic part of Europe, and we have to become citizens of Europe, and in the second, on the second level, the citizens of Romania.
Romanians entered the new decade almost shell-shocked in disbelief and joy at their unexpected liberty.
Democracy.
But never far away is the pain at the horrendous price they've paid to rid themselves of a tyrant.